How we doing there, boys and girls? Mandy's in. Welcome back to another video. So this is a bit of a continuation from yesterday's video, if nothing else. Yesterday we spoke pretty in detail about how is it too late to step into legendary markets at the moment, and we sort of decided that no, it's probably not, and we looked forward a little bit and we decided that, well, patch 9.0.5 is bringing about a whole bunch of changes, but I thought I would go as far as leaving it in the hands of the class experts to decide whether there's going to be any changing in the best of slot legendaries. And as it turns out, I highly underestimated the impact of these changes. I did a little bit of research. I had a little flick through Wowhead and I had a bit of a look at some of the class changes, and there's a surprising amount of classes that have actually had their legendaries, at least 3 or 4 of the legendary powers for each of their classes, heavily brought up, bringing them not always to be better than their past legendary, but at least bringing some very, very close. And this does some interesting things for us. When there's now choice available, people are going to want to go out and they're going to want to get more of these legendaries. Let me show you what I mean so that you guys can check it out yourself. If you jump onto Wowhead, you'll see in the last couple of days there's been a whole bunch of these, how would you describe them? What did they title them? Ranged DPS class writers' opinions on class changing, blah, 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 blah. There's one for range, there's one for melee, there's one for healers, and there's one for tanks. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it goes down into each and every spec, and when I first looked at these, I was like, oh, well, these are just going to be general class tuning. But 9 times out of 10, what they're actually focusing on is the legendary powers that have changed. Outside of legendary powers, there's not been many class changes. Don't get triggered now if your class has had a whole bunch of changes. Generally speaking, there's not been many class changes, certainly not anything dramatic anyway. But the legendary powers is a big thing. In some cases, having a quick flick through this and a quick read through this, there is actually a good amount of classes that they're going to have a new legendary that they're going to want to pick up. This is going to bring in a resurgence of legendary sales. But interestingly, what I very quickly came to the conclusion is that if you've been crafting legendaries up until now, you'll have a pretty good idea of which are the hot sellers. For example, in the Bone Shatter gear, if you're a leather worker, the Bone Shatter shoulders have been a massive seller for you, mainly because every single hunter has wanted them. But Hunter is actually one of the classes that their best in slot legendary, especially for Beast Mastery, is changing. Soul Forged Embers is what they've been using up until now, and that has to go on the head or the shoulders, hence why the shoulders was very profitable. But now it's switching to the Piercing Fangs, which then go on either the feet or the back. So you may start to see, and this is just one class and one spec, this is pretty much universal across the board, you might start to see some of those ones that you've not been able to sell particularly fast or at any sort of decent level of profit completely flip-flop to being really, really popular sellers. I think I'm probably going to have to do a little bit of effort in the next few days to go through each and every spec and try and work out what's changing and see if I can start to predict and guide you guys in the right direction as to which ones are going to be the more powerful ones to pick up. But yeah, this is interesting. It's I don't think 9.0.5 is going to be an explosion of legendaries like the beginning of the expansion was, but it's definitely going to bring a whole bunch of light to it. One thing I will also note is if you are dealing with legendaries and you're playing around with legendaries, be aware that the materials are going to do some weird things. I decided to have a little jump on the PTR again. A week or so ago we found there was this vendor that is now allowing you to trade in Valor, which Valor's not coming until patch 9.0.5, but it will allow you to trade your Valor for some of these materials. You go to this fella in Orobos, what's his name, Kotal, an exchange specialist, and when we first found him, he only had a shipment of heavy callous hides, meaning you could trade in your week's worth of Valor, your 750 Valor, and you could trade it in for 10 heavy callous hides. Now, of course, that's not massive amounts. Today's prices, that's somewhere in the region of about 5,000 gold worth of materials, but it's an option for you, it's a possibility. Since this has been implemented though, there's two new ones. We've seen the shipment of Alethrium ore and we've seen the shipment of lightless silk. Now, this is a really good indication of Blizzard really not paying much attention to the markets and what things are priced at, because you get 20 lightless silk for 750 valor, or you get 20 Alethrium for 750 valor. Nobody in their right mind is going to buy the lightless silk one, because at rough market prices, 20 lightless silk is, what's that going to be, like 2,000 gold or something? I don't know. The point is here is that virtually everybody, if they are going to use this vendor, are going to trade in for heavy callous hide. Even if they don't need the heavy callous hide, they'll sell it on the auction house and use the gold that they get from selling that to buy whatever it is they do actually need. Now, we spoke in a lot of detail about how this affects markets in a previous video. I'll leave the link to that one down below in case you want to jump onto that one after this one. But it does weird things to the market. It brings a sort of balance to the materials. Now, I don't know if this is going to be very influential or not. If the valor prices stay as they are, I really don't think it'll have much effect at all. But this is still in PTR. If Blizzard decide to drop or tweak or tune these when it goes live, this might actually have a little bit more of effect. And this brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about, and that's, do we start stockpiling materials? Stockpiling is always dangerous. In my opinion, at least, stockpiling can be quite dangerous because what you're doing is you're artificially creating more demand in a market when technically that demand isn't there. Basically, when you buy something and you start stockpiling it, you're squirreling it away and hoarding it, hoping for the day when that material becomes rare and in super need, and in theory the price goes up and you can benefit from it. You have to be super careful with how you do this, is the God's honest truth. I tend not to stockpile much. Materials are always available. If materials are scarce, they're scarce for like 24 hours. If you miss a day, you miss a day. You learn a lesson and you get it right next week. Stockpiling many material, especially at the prices that some of these materials sit at, firstly is going to require you to have an awful lot of gold, and secondly, it's kind of hella risky. Materials are cheap though at the moment. That's one thing I will say. They are cheap at the moment, and if you've got some spare cash lying around, well, give it a go. But don't go crazy. Don't start stockpiling hundreds of thousands of materials, because whilst there will be good demand for the legendaries again, let's not forget that there's also going to be a lot of other people trying to sell these items, and we already know the cancel scan war is crazy. So just act with caution. That's basically my advice. But to summarise ever so quickly for you, yes, legendaries I feel actually in patch 9.0.5 I did underestimate their potential quite heavily. Now I've done a little bit more research into it, it does look like a lot of people will be purchasing some new base legendary items to craft and utilise these new powers. There is though going to be this vendor for materials which may have a sway on the pricing of how much it costs to make these base items, and if you choose to go out there and stockpile some materials, just, you know, be cautious about it. Don't spend over your limits. If you only have 1,000,000 gold, don't spend 1,000,000 gold on stockpiling materials, because if it all goes wrong, you're going to be a real sad panda. But there we go. I'll leave it there for today, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed. Hit that like button, it really does help my channel grow, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing. We produce content here virtually every single day, very much focused on the economy in World of Warcraft, and we even live stream here 5 days a week. So click the bell, you'll get notifications as and when we go live or new videos pop up. The early bird does catch the worm, as they say, with many gold making tips, so you'll thank me for hitting that subscribe button. Well, anyway, boys and girls, enjoy that, have a good day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.